After 10 years of no communication, my family reached out to me because my father was dying. Now, they expect me to take responsibility for my sister's life and future. So, 10 days ago, my family contacted me after not speaking to me for 10 years. I am 31 years old, and when I was 21, soon after graduating from college, I decided to cut ties with my family and move away. The reason for this was the way they treated me compared to my sister. I have a twin sister. Let's call her Rebecca. She is 12 minutes older than me, and for some reason, my family has always treated her much better than me. She has always been considered the golden child of the family, and I never understood why. Even though I have achieved more than she has, my family always preferred her. I was always a better student, better at sports, and even better at things she claimed to be an expert in, like art. No matter what it was, I was better at it. The reason for this was that as a child, I always tried to outdo her, hoping it would make my parents love me more. Instead, it only seemed to make them like me less because they probably thought I was trying to put her down on purpose. But that wasn't my intention. I just wanted them to show me the same love and affection they gave Rebecca, but I never received it. They always supported her, enrolled her in the classes she wanted, and bought her whatever she asked for. She always had them wrapped around her finger. For me, it was the complete opposite. Every time I asked for something, I was told not to act entitled or spoiled. Even when it came to college, Rebecca decided to take a year off, which turned into 3 years. She never ended up going to college, so she doesn't even have a degree. On the other hand, I got accepted into a well-known business school because of my good grades. I needed money from my parents to pay for tuition, but they told me I would have to take out a student loan and pay it off myself in the future because they didn't feel obligated to support me after I turned 18. That really hurt, but I needed help with the loans, so I didn't argue. I accepted that they were never going to love me the way they loved Rebecca, so I gave up trying. I didn't stay in touch with them while I was in college and only came home for the holidays. Even then, I didn't talk to them much because I had emotionally distanced myself from them after high school to avoid getting hurt repeatedly. When I was about to graduate, I invited them to the ceremony, but I never got a response. I tried calling, sending emails, and even thought about visiting them, but they didn't reply to anything. I assumed they just didn't want to attend. It wasn't until after the ceremony that I found out from some relatives that they couldn't come because my sister's first day of art school was the same day as my graduation. And, of course, her first day was more important than my graduation. They couldn't let her be alone that day. It was shocking because she wasn't even attending a prestigious school. She was just taking art classes at a local community college, which was only half an hour from our home. That was the moment I realized that my existence didn't matter to them. They would rather I never contact them again. The message was clear, and I finally understood it. That day, I decided I didn't need to pretend to have a family to make myself feel better. In fact, not having one was probably better than having a family like this. So, I stopped talking to my parents, blocked them everywhere, and walked away. I did the same with my sister, because Rebecca and I never had a good relationship, due to the affection she received from our parents. She always thought she was superior to me, even though I had proof that I was better than her in every way. I think she knew it, which is why she was so insecure about me and always tried to put me down. The joke was on her, though, because now I'm in a much better place in life than she is. She was always quite arrogant and smug about everything, so we never really got along. I didn't regret blocking her or cutting them all out of my life. After that, I didn't have any financial support, and I also had to worry about paying off my student loans. So, I took the first job opportunity that came my way. Since then, I've been working hard to prove myself and show everyone that I'm good enough on my own and don't need my parents to survive. Things were tough at first, but I had many good friends from college and school who always had my back. Now, I'm in a much better position financially and mentally. For the past 5 years, I've been working at a company that produces vegan products. Recently, I've been considering starting my own business. I've become really interested in the whole vegan lifestyle and have been studying it deeply over the last couple of years. Even though I'm not vegan myself, I think it's a huge market to tap into. So, for the past few months, I've been thinking about starting my own business and have spoken to a few people who are willing to join me in this venture. The plan was to work on my business model, plan everything out over the next few months, and then quit my job once I had a couple of investors on board to launch my business. But then last week, I received news from my family that my father was on his deathbed and that I needed to come see him. It had been 10 years since I had spoken to anyone in my family, and I was really surprised they were reaching out to me. But when I learned that my father had been battling cancer for the last 3 years, I didn't hesitate. I dropped everything and went back home. By the time I arrived, it was already too late. He was in really bad condition, and there was no way of turning things around. Maybe, in a last-ditch effort to make things right with me, or maybe just to talk about my sister, they invited me to visit him one last time. When I saw him, I almost broke down in the hospital. I had never seen my dad like that before. My mother hugged me, and it was just incredibly painful. For a while, I forgot about everything from the past. I was just worried about my father and whether he was going to make it. Rebecca was there too, but I didn't speak to her because she didn't make any effort to talk to me. She just made a face and sat in the corner the entire time I was there. My mom spoke to me and told me about my father, but Rebecca was the only one who acted as if I wasn't even there, and I found that really annoying. So, I didn't speak to her. Honestly, I really don't like her, and I have no interest in what she's up to. I thought it was completely fine that we didn't speak to each other, and no one else in the family seemed to mind our behavior either, because they knew the kind of relationship I had with them. This was just a week ago, 2 days after my father passed away. Everyone already knew he wasn't going to make it, so my mother and my sister had already made the funeral arrangements. It didn't take much time to wrap everything up, and I was able to return home. Unfortunately, before my father passed away, I had been made to agree to something I didn't want to do. On the second day of my visit, Rebecca went home because she was exhausted. It was just my parents and me in the hospital room. They started talking to me about my work. I thought it was innocent at first and didn't think much of it. Consider my father was literally on his deathbed. I didn't expect them to have any hidden intentions at that moment. So, I told them that I had been working at a very successful company for the past 2 years, and that things were going well. They listened to me, congratulated me, and then suddenly started talking about how badly Rebecca was doing. They said she had dropped out of community college after just a few months and hadn't bothered to go back. She didn't have a degree, and her grades had never been that great. She couldn't really explain the gap in her life, and since she didn't attend any other college, she hadn't done anything until she was 25. Then, my parents started pressuring her to get a job, so she finally did. But she could never last longer than 3 to 4 months at any job. She would come home after a couple of months and tell her parents that she had quit because the job was too difficult and they weren't paying her enough. The strange part was they were paying her exactly what they had agreed on. She was working low-paying jobs because she didn't have a degree, and she wasn't even willing to put in the time or effort to work hard and move up the ladder. None of it made sense, and my parents had been trying really hard to explain to her that her arguments wouldn't hold up in the real world. They had been fighting a lot with Rebecca, trying to make her more independent, but she didn't seem to care about her future at all. She was just taking everything very casually. Whenever my parents tried to speak to her about it, she would just ignore them. Recently, she quit her last job 6 months ago and was just sitting at home with nothing to do. My parents told me they were really worried about her and wanted me to be the one to look out for her. After my father was gone, my mother would be too old to keep supporting her. She would have to focus on her own retirement, as she was just 1 year away from retiring. My mother couldn't keep working to support her daughter, who should have been able to support herself by now. Honestly, I had no idea how to respond to what they were saying. My dad was suffering, and I didn't want to be the one to break his heart after so long. We had gone 10 years without contact, and now, at this moment, I had really mixed emotions. I tried to tell my parents that I was planning to start my own business, and this wasn't the right time for me to take on such a responsibility. I knew that Rebecca was a liability and had no interest in earning money on her own. She was totally comfortable living off other people's money, and that's what she had been doing. The only difference now was that before, it had been my parents taking care of her, mostly my father, because he made more money than my mother. But now, my father was passing the responsibility to me and telling me I had to look out for my sister. I could understand why he wanted me to take on the responsibility, but I tried to explain that it wouldn't be possible for me at the time, since I was planning on quitting my job to start something of my own. All my money would go into that. But my dad told me that they had already spent a lot of money on his health care and medical expenses, and even after this, he wanted my mother to be comfortable. That was his priority. He knew I would be there to look after Rebecca, which is why he was counting on me. He kind of forced and manipulated me into agreeing to take care of Rebecca's future. He made me promise I would put my business plans on hold until Rebecca was at least a little financially stable. I was made to promise I would look after her and have her back until then. I didn't even know how long that would take, but I still said yes, because I didn't feel comfortable saying no to a man on his deathbed, no matter what he had done to me in the past. I wasn't comfortable with it. I guess that was really stupid of me, but I don't think anyone else in my position could have reacted differently. And if someone could have stood up to their parents in that situation, I have to say they might be really strong, but I'm not that way. I just ended up agreeing to it. I wasn't happy about it, but I had to do it, because it seemed my father was going to pass away soon, and I couldn't say no to his dying wish. They also told me exactly what it involved. Rebecca was in a relationship with a guy from school and was planning to visit him since. He was working in another city, but still in the same state. I really couldn't figure out why they couldn't visit each other more often. If not Rebecca, at least Jared could come to visit her. But they were doing the long-distance thing. I knew this guy she was dating, and I knew the kind of person he was, so I instantly knew that it wasn't good for her to be involved with him. That night, my parents told me that Rebecca had been talking to this guy for the past 2 years, mostly online. He had come back to visit for a couple of weeks during the holidays, and that was the only time they got together. This man, let's call him Jared. Let's just say he didn't have the strongest values when it came to women. In school, he was notorious for flirting with every girl he could talk to, and he had been caught cheating several times by his high school girlfriends. I didn't keep track of him after graduation, but I heard from a couple of mutual friends that he had already been divorced once for infidelity. I don't know what his problem was, but I knew this was not a guy I would trust. I tried to explain this to my parents, but they told me that Rebecca really liked him. They had seen them together during his visits back home and believed they were meant to be together because they looked absolutely perfect and really in love. I already had a bad feeling about this, because they were doing the long-distance thing, and that meant all sorts of opportunities for him to cheat without worrying about being caught, since he was in another city altogether, and Rebecca was clueless about it. My parents told me that they wanted me to pay for Rebecca's flight tickets to go see him in the next couple of weeks, because they knew she would be feeling weak after our father passed away. They wanted her to have somebody, and since my mother would be too busy with the legal formalities after my dad's death, and I would obviously have to go back to work, she would need somebody by her side. They wanted it to be her boyfriend. I tried my best to tell them about the kind of guy Jared was and warn them about the consequences, but they were convinced that Rebecca and Jared were going to get married in the future. They kept telling me that I would have to take care of these things after my father was gone, and I would also have to bear the expense of the wedding in the future as well. They were pretty convinced that Jared was the perfect guy for Rebecca, and I couldn't talk any sense into them. So I just agreed, because it seemed pointless to try and convince them otherwise. After my father passed away, I pulled Rebecca aside at the funeral. I told her that I knew about Jared and that I had tried to warn her. I had known about Jared's Casanova behavior for a really long time, and I didn't think it was good for her to be involved with him. But just like my parents, She brushed off my warnings and told me he had changed. She said they were in love, and she knew he would never cheat on her or do anything to hurt her, so she wasn't too worried about my warnings. She thanked me for being concerned, but then told me that she would just appreciate the financial help. She said I didn't have to be her parent and try to form any kind of emotional bond with her. It wasn't required. That was kind of mean and hurtful, and after that conversation, I decided I was going to do exactly as she said. My father had only asked me to look out for her financially. He hadn't said anything about the emotional aspect. In a way, she was right about what she said. I decided that I was going to keep myself emotionally distanced from my family because I had better things to focus on, my work. After the funeral, I came back home, and it's been a week since then. 2 days after the funeral, my mother asked me to book flight tickets for Becca to go see Jared, and I did what she asked. I didn't bother checking up on anyone after that because I got busy with my work. However, yesterday, I had an unexpected visitor show up at my doorstep. It was Rebecca. She had taken the bus from Jared's city to mine because she was too embarrassed to call me, but she didn't want to go home either. She couldn't afford bus tickets, so that's how she ended up here after traveling for 10 hours. When she showed up, she was exhausted and in tears when I opened the door. I was really confused about what was going on. The second I opened the door, she started crying immediately and told me that I'd been right about everything. She told me that she had been planning to surprise Jared, but when she showed up at his place, things had taken an unexpected turn. He had actually been spending time with another girl at his house when she arrived. When she saw that, she confronted him immediately and asked who the girl was. He told her to mind her own business, then said they were not exclusive and he was free to do whatever he wanted when he wasn't at home with her. He told her she had no right to ask him about his life. That obviously upset her because, in her mind, they had been together for 2 years and she was fully committed to him, even thinking about marriage. So, that was really hurtful to her. They ended up having a big fight in his hallway, and in a moment of anger, she apparently lifted her duffel bag and hit him with it because she was that angry. Unfortunately, one of the chains on the bag caught him in the eyebrow, and he started bleeding profusely. She got really scared, ran for it, and took the first bus she could find to get here. Now she wanted my help. She told me she was ready to learn how to be independent and fix her life, and that I needed to be the one to help her because I had been independent for almost 10 years now. She thought I would be the perfect person to teach her the ropes in my line of work and give her a job. She even told me that she knew I was planning to start my own business and was hoping I would give her an opportunity to work there, not as an employee, but as a partner. It was a lot to process, and before I agreed anything, I decided to ask her if she knew whether Jared had pressed charges against her, because if he had, I didn't want to get involved. What she had done was wrong, no matter what Jared was doing. She had no right to get physically violent with him, and that was grounds for pressing charges. Even if she had managed to run away from the scene, he could easily find her and she could be arrested. When I asked her about it, that's when the truth came out. She admitted she hadn't actually managed to escape. He had pressed charges against her, and she had to pay a huge fine as compensation for what she did. That's why she was here. I told her there was no way I was going to help her out, and I told her to go back home because I didn't want to be involved in any of this. She got very upset when I said that and reminded me of the promise I had made to my father before he passed away, but I told her that the promise didn't matter anymore. It was obvious to me that she was never going to do the right thing, so I wasn't going to clean up her mess for her. I just wanted to focus on starting my own business and didn't want her to be involved because she was a liability. I told her the least I could do was book her flight tickets to go back home, but after that, she was on her own. I was going back to no contact with my family because this was just too much. It had only been a week, and she had already made such a huge mistake. None of this would have happened if she had just listened to my warning and stayed away from that guy, which she chose not to do, even after everything I said. I was really irritated by the whole situation. So I told her I would book her flight tickets, and she could go wait at the airport. I didn't want her to waste any more of my time because I had a lot of work to catch up on. She couldn't argue with me because I was already booking the tickets, So she headed to the airport in a cab. A few minutes later, I thought that would be the end of it, but obviously, now my mother is angry with me. She believes I should have been kinder to my sister and should have made her a partner in the business, since she wanted to get her life together. My mother thinks this was my opportunity to be helpful, but I turned it down because I was too selfish. I don't think I was selfish at all. In fact, I think I was pretty helpful. I booked her the flight tickets to go back home, and now it's up to her to figure out how to pay the fine to Jared. But that's not my problem anymore, because she's the one who chose to hit him and visit him after I warned her not to. My mother is really angry with me and keeps calling and messaging, reminding me of the promise I made to my father, telling me I'm not living up to it the way she expected. She seems to think I'm in the wrong for refusing to clean up my sister's mess, even though I kept my promise to my father not to let her get away with everything pie. So it's been 3 days since my sister visited me, and I turned her away. My mother has been trying to contact me, but I decided to block her because it was really getting on my nerves. I don't owe anyone anything to help them. Yes, I made a promise to my father, but honestly, I was manipulated and coerced into making that promise. It wasn't something I really wanted to do, and I think I made that pretty clear. Most of the comments I've seen say that it was manipulative of my parents to contact me only when my father was on his deathbed. Even then, it was clear that they just wanted me to visit so they could feel secure knowing I would help Rebecca after my father was gone. He still manipulated me into doing something for the golden child of the family. It's really unbelievable. They only ever cared about her, not about me, no matter what kind of relationship we had. Yes, he was still my dad, and it hurt to watch him die, but I don't know how to feel about it anymore. I don't really miss him, since I never had a good relationship with any of them, and for the past 10 years, I haven't been in touch with them. But I do feel kind of let down and disappointed. It was my mistake for believing that things could change between all of us, or that my family could ever bring themselves to care about anything other than my sister. I guess that's never going to happen. Anyway, I can care about a lot more things that have nothing to do with my sister, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on starting my own business now, no matter what. Nobody's going to stop me. I already lost focus once, and it wasn't good for me. I'm not going to let it happen again. Hi. So Rebecca reached out to me today. I guess I had forgotten to block her. She sent me a text saying that she had managed to pay off the fine and didn't need my help anymore. She also told me that my mother was really disappointed in me, and she never wanted to see me again. I guess that's fine by me. I didn't want to see them again either. They only wanted me for my money, not for who I was as a person. They were never going to regret how they treated me all my life, and I knew that. So after reading that message, I didn't even bother to reply, and I just blocked her. I was done with this. Hey! So it's been a couple of months, and I just wanted to give you guys a little update on how my business venture is going. The business model is almost complete, and so far, every investor I've spoken to has expressed a lot of interest in my business. I think I'm going to quit my job and put in my resignation in a couple of days because I'm finally ready for the next chapter. I am once again no contact with my family, and things have never been better for me. Honestly, I think going no contact with them once again was the best decision I could have made, and this business, this is going to be my new family.